How has been your experience working with different finance teams?
Opens the right doors to level you up.
So what are the things that you look for?
What I would do from an FP&A perspective,
Are there any particular things that you would ask people in the interviews?
communicate that in the interview process. So what am I using a financial model for?
How would you advise somebody who's new in this?
Within the first 30 days, here's what I'll deliver.
Hey, hi Jason, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you for joining me today. So before we start, I'll give a quick introduction. So Jason and I have been in touch for a while on LinkedIn and through other platforms, and he has been in various leadership finance roles and has over a decade of experience working with different organizations. He's also a founder of one of the FP&A product, which is Point FP&A. So, Jason, could you, before we get into the questions for the book, could you help our listeners and viewers know a little bit about yourself, also a little bit about your company?
Sure, yeah. So about me, I spent my entire career running finance for startups. And over the past 15 years, I've literally seen it all. I've been the first finance hire in, and I've stayed all the way through exit. I've done everything from building out the accounting from scratch to working with our engineers to make sure our systems were capturing transactions correctly, to then, building out the first initial financial model, then managing a business based off the financials, communicating that to investors, communicating that to potential people who were trying to acquire our business, leading the company through an acquisition, acquiring businesses, taking a company public, taking a company through an audit, building teams. So you name it. I've been doing finance for startups my entire career. Recently, at the start of 2023, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, always wanted to start my own thing. I realized the only way I knew how to make money was to help startups do finance. And so that's what I did. I launched my own finance as a service, FP&A as a service business at the start of 2023. And thankfully, it's gone really, really well. I have a number of clients, all, kind of at that Series A stage, which is the stage I enjoy the most. And I do anything from purely FP&A for them to being their CFO.
Understood. So working with startups has been your area of expertise from the perspective of the tool is what I understand.
Yes, I would definitely say that. But I do think I have a breadth of knowledge that would be totally relevant to your readers, including taking companies through audits, understanding how to set up the books, leveraging accounting to move into an FP&A role, which I'm happy to share stories there. But yes, finance for startups is where most of my career has been.
So about that accounting and audit roles. So what skills do you think are necessary for one to acquire before they think about getting into FP&A, or once they move into FP&A? What are the few skills that you think should be absolutely necessary for them to acquire for people who are thinking about this change?
Yeah, sure. I actually think, and a lot of people would debate this, but I actually think a critical understanding or a deep understanding of accounting is critical to be successful in FP&A. And if you just think about what is FP&A doing, we're trying to forecast what the income statement, the balance sheet, statement of cash flows will look like in the future. And the only way to understand what those will look like is to, yes, you got to understand what people are doing and the financial pieces associated with it, but you also have to understand how the accounting works behind every single deal, transaction, all of that, because you're really just trying to forecast the accounting. So having a deep understanding of accounting is critical in FP&A. So what skills do you need to take your accounting knowledge and move into FP&A is what you're asking. And so
Mhm.
take your accounting knowledge, but then also you have to combine what is like, how do we structure deals to maximize certain revenue streams or minimize certain costs on the income statement? How does, acquiring a new customer move all the way down through the funnel before it hits revenue, before it hits accounting? So those are the kind of, you take your accounting knowledge, but then you have to apply it to what people are actually doing. And then you bring that together to produce, forecasts and budgets, and then to be able to articulate why you're putting together these numbers, why you think the future looks this way. And that's the kind of the skill set that you need. And accounting is at the foundation of that.
No, I think that's a great point that you put across. So a lot of people don't take that seriously. So something that they are very good at, and accounting is definitely the foundation skill that you need for any finance role, for any FP&A role, because that's something that you have. That's your strength because you're coming from that background, which you can apply. And as you mentioned, FP&A is forecasting P&L and income statement most of the time. So knowing the accounting is always going to be helpful. Now, after talking about skills, let's talk about certification. So a lot of people feel that they need to do a certification to get into these roles. What has been your experience? And I know you're based out of US, Washington DC. So how are people there perceiving certifications on FP&A? Any ones that you have done that has helped you, or any of the certification that you recommend?
Yeah. Okay. So I have an MBA from Cornell University, which is a considered somewhat prestigious university in the US. I also took the FMVA certification from the Corporate Finance Institute. Here's what I'll say. Everything that I apply in my role at Point FP&A, kind of working across a number of companies as CFO or head of FP&A or whatever, I learned on the job at startups. So are certifications critical for doing the job? I personally don't believe so, but did those certifications allow me to get into the roles that enabled me to get the experiences to then leverage into my current role? I do think so. I think they opened up doors. It qualified me. When you're pitching for a job, you're kind of like pitching yourself to someone who doesn't even know you, but now needs to like trust that you can do the work. And so it's just a validation point. It's never going to hurt you. But I would say that most of what I apply was all learned on the job. But that's not dismissing the importance of getting a credential, because they're helpful in getting you the higher level jobs with the better experiences and all that.
Got it. So it's not a substitute for your on-the-job learning, but it definitely gives you that additional push or the edge in terms of when it comes to jobs or when it comes to a skill that you want to refine, is what I understand.
I think it opens the right doors to level you up on the job, is what I would say.
Makes sense. Now, moving on, a lot of people feel that financial modeling and Power BI are critical or essential to learn for FP&A roles, and that could help them transition. So those are a couple of skills that come up often. How has been your experience working with different finance teams on those two skills particularly? One is financial modeling, and the other is data visualization, mostly using through a tool like Power BI and or Tableau.
So this comes down to like, what am I using a financial model for? And again, I'm not applying this to multi-billion-dollar companies with 50,000 employees. I'm literally working hand in hand with CEOs to tell them what decisions we need to make, what I think the impact of their decisions will be, what are the risks, what does that do to runway? Does it shorten runway by 2 months? But if we knock it out of the park, but look at our revenue and look at our multiple, and we can go raise a higher valuation type thing. So what am I using a financial model for? It's to track everything, to give people feedback on the results. It's to keep people accountable. I go to the marketing team and I say, you're expected to spend this much and deliver these results. Sales, you're expected to close these deals. Product, you're supposed to launch these initiatives this month. So using it for accountability. I'm using it to help raise money. So I say all of this because my goal of the model is to make it where people can read it kind of like a book and immediately understand it. It's not necessarily for a finance audience. I don't need fancy dashboards that are gonna kill people with data and present it and just overcomplicate things. So I try and keep it very simple, and the way I keep it simple is actually the challenge for me. But it also makes it entirely more useful, and people start to look at the model for answering their questions and to feel secure in the decisions that they're going to make, because we have a good estimate of what the outcomes of those decisions might be. So I don't really dabble in like Power BI or anything. I try and stick to kind of the basics, Excel, show, and it's all about communicating and having people understand what I'm doing, and less about what is actually in the input of the model.
Got it. So what I take away is Excel is probably important, and keeping it simple so that you can communicate versus making it complicated is what you mentioned. Makes sense.
Exactly. And for other people to understand it. It's not for me. I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it to help people make decisions, to help answer their questions, to give them a sense of security when they're saying, we're gonna we only have X amount in the bank, but we want to spend this much in marketing or this much in new hires. Like, what does that do? What is the impact to us? Do we have the budget for that? And if so, where do we run out type thing?
It is an end goal to help business teams make decisions, keep them accountable, and help them basically track whatever they are doing on a day-to-day or a month-to-month basis. Makes sense.
Exactly. And I try not to lose sight of that. So anytime I get too calculated or too fancy, I start thinking, if I didn't understand accounting, would this make sense to me?
All right. Awesome. Moving to the next section, which is more on interview preparation and the first few days after getting into the new role. So let me start with the first one, which is on the interview preparation. So what's your experience being in interviewing? So I'm sure you must have interviewed a lot of freshers and a lot of analysts in your present and your past roles at different companies. So what are the things that you look for, and could you share some experiences, good or bad, which can help people learn from them?
Yeah, I think when you're interviewing, you're trying to convince someone to pay you money, right? Yeah. So you can't just be all technicals. I think, okay, so what has worked well for me when I was interviewing for jobs, what landed me in higher level roles that got me paid more money? One is I rehearsed my story like crazy. I rehearsed like why I picked this job, what I did at that job, why it's relevant to you. And I was just so good at telling my story, getting people excited, and taking components of that story and making it super relevant to that job. I would also say I was like a very good accountant with a very good FP&A skill set. And so, I never really needed to prepare for the technical components of it. And I felt very comfortable being able to handle any component of any job within finance at a startup. And I think that kind of shone through on the interview. I think for now, as I start to interview others to help me out at Point FP&A, I personally look for people who can who don't need a lot of coaching and mentoring, and can trust, I can trust, if I ask them to do something, that they won't just do it, but they'll do it to a degree that shows that they actually cared. Put some extra oomph into it. People that can talk, have some energy to them, that have some backbone. Maybe I'll say something and they'll tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm not here to pretend that I know everything. And I think that's something also a lot of the clients appreciate in me, is I'm not there to just validate everything they're saying, but I come to the table with maybe you should do it this way, or here's what I've seen has worked and why I think we should set it up a certain way. So those are kind of the characteristics that I look for now in interviewing people. But when I was interviewing, I got really good at telling my story, which showcased my communication skills. And I also was very comfortable answering any accounting or FP&A question. So that's what worked for me.
Interesting. So you mentioned about so when you are looking for candidates, or when you are hiring for your team, you look for people who can get the job done, is what you're saying, and do it in a way that shows that they have put in the effort and care to do it
Yeah.
the best way. How do you
I would
test?
say not even to get the job done, but when I ask for something, they kind of instinctively know, and then they'll do the work and they'll say, okay, well, Jason's going to ask me these 3 questions if I just show him this. So why don't I answer those 3 questions in an email? Say, hey, Jason, here's what I did, and here's what you might be thinking, and here's my answers to it. Just do that extra level that's needed, so that we don't have to have a meeting about it, and we just all understand it, and it saves everyone's time, and you put that extra thought into it. I would say also, one thing I want to add in terms of getting the job, after my interviews, I used to send people sample financial models that I put together, which really kind of, move the needle in terms of all right, we like this guy, but we're still thinking maybe we go with a different candidate. Then I would send the model, and they would get a real flavor of my work and the look and feel of kind of what I would do from an FP&A perspective, the work product. And I think that was a good convincing tactic. Sometimes I would even send them a presentation I put together.
I think having that portfolio ready and being able to share that with your prospective employees is definitely showing that you are putting that extra effort, and you are proactive compared to, I mean, if you have other candidates to choose from, definitely you will stand out. Thank you for that. And if I have to ask you, so all the qualities that you mentioned you're looking for, one is proactiveness and being able to anticipate questions and then help you answer them. So what are the questions that you would ask in an interview to be able to gauge those qualities? Are there any particular things that you would ask people in the interviews?
I mean, for me, I'm working with young companies, so I kind of want to know about their experience at a startup, building a model from scratch, their knowledge of accounting. I would probably press them on some accounting components, because what I'm seeing in bigger companies is that a lot of FP&A people kind of don't really understand accounting processes. Like they don't understand the process of closing the books and creating a journal entry and accruing for something. So I think that's when the company's smaller, you really got to know that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I work with controllers all the time. Like, hey, we should book things this way, or here's where I budgeted something, and it's just a necessary skill. So when I talk to FP&A people, I have to ask them about their accounting. When I talk to accounting people, I have to ask them about their Excel skills. So it just depends who I'm asking and who I'm talking to, what I would ask.
Understood. Now to the second part of the question, and probably this would be the last question for us today, before we wrap up. How would you advise somebody who's new in this role to approach it? Because the first few days or first few months are most critical, and also very uncomfortable, especially they've not worked in that profile before. So what would you advise as a first 60-day or a 90-day plan for somebody who's going into that role?
So if you're just starting an FP&A role, this is your first one, or maybe this is you just went from like an analyst to now a senior director, this is like an elevation. What should you do? My advice, within the first, let's just say 3 days, like deliver something of value. It could just be like an analysis, make it look really clean, show them what you're seeing, like do something where within the first 72 hours to the first 7 days, where you make like at least a little bit of a difference. Then sorry. And then
like I didn't mean to interrupt. Please continue.
What I think so I started my own business where people have hired me over and over again to lead their FP&A function. And why do I think I've been so successful in landing these roles? And then I've literally never had a client churn. So why have I been successful with them? I have a process that I run where in the interview process, which goes back to your earlier questions, I say within the first 30 days, here's what I'll deliver. And it's usually like a full working model with all KPIs. And I know exactly what I need. I know how to set up the model. I know what information I'm asking for other teams. I know how to like go into QuickBooks, design the reports I need, go into Salesforce, design the reports I need. So I have this process. So my advice to be successful in the first 30, 60 days is come up with your process and just follow that to a T. Communicate that in the interview process. Say, here's what I'll deliver in the first 30 days. Here's what I'll deliver in the first 60 days. Here's what I'll do in the first 90 days. And here's what I'll do on an ongoing basis. And this way you can stay grounded in what you're doing. You know what you're doing. You know what results you're delivering. You already set the expectation that this is what you would do. And that's what will make you successful in the first 7 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, but also consistently over the course of years.
Thank you for that. So what I take away is a process. So make sure that you have a process to approach the first few days. And also what I like is deliver something which is of value. It can be a very short it can be a very small thing or a small win. But having that definitely builds that perception. Okay, this person is here to add some value. So
Right.
Thanks, Jason. I think we are on time, and I know you have to run for a meeting. But before you go, we want to know if somebody wants to reach to you, what is the best way to do that? So if you can let us know, that'll be great.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Jason Hershman, founder of Point FP&A. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm usually pretty responsive.
All right, we'll make sure we put that wherever this goes. And thank you again for joining us. And I hope we meet again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.